Hey there, this is Felix from Goldammer Vintage Watches, and in today's video we want to introduce you to a timepiece which has been stealing hearts for decades, the Patek Philippe Calatrava. We will share all important facts to its history, its iconic design, and why it's so expensive and highly sought after by many collectors. Trends come and go, but style is forever. And so it is that the Calatrava's very understated, rounded design continues to defy the decades. In this video, we doesn't want to start with the history as usual. We want to take off with a topic that has interested us a lot since we started collecting vintage watches: the incredibly high prices of Patek Philippe watches. But what are the reasons for this? Many watch collectors call Patek Philippe the Holy Grail brand. And that for good reason. It's one of the most sought after watch companies in the world, with a huge amount of collections that showcase its elegant aesthetics and technical innovation. To put things in perspective, we'd like to start to compare our today's piece with the reference 3445 with two very similar pieces from Vacheron Constantin. They are all crafted in 18K gold, are similar in production year and size, and feature the same dial layout. The only difference is a day window at the Patek, and both Vacherons are hand-wound. The interesting thing here is that both Vacherons together are still cheaper than the Patek Philippe. So raises the question, are the Calatravas worth the money? When talking about the prices of Patek Philippe watches, it is very important to distinguish between list prices and market prices. Back in the day, Patek Philippe Calatrava was not double priced like today. In recent years, a younger target group has discovered Patek Philippe because the brand stands for the ultimate in luxury watchmaking. As a status symbol, Patek Philippe watches also adorn the wrists of many celebrities from sports, music, and also cinema. Actually, the question why the Calatrava is so highly rated is relatively easy to answer. The demand is higher than the supply. And there are also two other facts which increase higher prices. First, Patek Philippe's production methods. While many other brands rely on machines to produce their watches, Patek Philippe crafts most of their timepieces completely by hand. And second, the level of detail and finishing that Patek put into their Calatrava. This is much higher than almost any other luxury brand. This beautifully finished movement requires extensive skill, which means higher prices. Patek also integrates expensive materials into their movements for even more unique creations, raising their prices accordingly. Just have a look at this outstanding 18K solid gold roller. To put things in a modern perspective, in 2019 Omega produced 600,000 watches, Rolex was thought to produce round about 1 million, and Patek only produced 60,000 pieces. Next, let's have a deep dive into the history of the Calatrava. Nowadays, the idea that Patek Philippe runs into financial problems seems to be ridiculous. But that is exactly what happened at the beginning of the 20th century. Because of the depression after the First World War, the company ran into financial difficulties. From a high of almost 21 million francs in 1929, the value of Swiss watch export flopped to little more than 60 million in 1930, falling to just above 8 million in 1932. So a loss of 30 million francs in 3 years. Patek Philippe's rescuer came in the form of the two brothers, Jean and Charles-Henri Stern. They had just purchased the brand from the previous owners in 1932. Their family already owned a dial manufacturer that supplied Patek, among others. The brothers knew that in order to keep the company's head afloat, they had to change something on the product strategy. Patek's typical 1930s clients were wealthy, high-end watch collectors. But to reach a wider audience, they introduced a simplified mainstream model that would expand the appeal of a Patek Philippe watch while maintaining its exceptional reputation for quality and excellence in design and manufacture. Their solution came in form of the first Calatrava with the reference 96, launched in 1932. They named this new timepiece Calatrava, referencing the symbol of the 12th century Calatrava Knights of Spain and Portugal. Patek Philippe had already registered the Calatrava cross design as its trademark 45 years earlier in 1887. The brand had just never used this name or symbol for its collections until this new timepiece was born. Although it did not appear more regularly on the crowns and movements of Patek Philippe's watches until the 1960s. So if you find a Calatrava before the 1960s, don't worry if there's no cross on the crown or on the movement. Even if watches for the wrist exist much earlier than the beginning 1930s, they were not very well known. But after its widespread use in the World War I, it quickly gained popularity far away from the battlefield. Round watches are common today and nothing special. But back in the beginning 1930s, things looked very different. The Cartier Santos, regarded today as first series-produced wristwatch for men, arrived in 1997 in a quadrilateral case, as did the Cartier Tank of 1990. Early Rolex Oyster watches of the late 1920s were octagonal and cushion in shape. Jaeger-LeCoultre's two-sided reverso, patented in 1931, was rectangular. The rounded form of the first Calatrava was the vision of the English watch designer David Penny, which was heavily influenced by a German design aesthetic. This timepiece was informed by the founding principle of the Bauhaus movement. But what exactly means Bauhaus? Translated into German, it means Die Form folgt der Funktion, or form follows function in English. Bauhaus was an unorthodox German art school founded after the First World War in 1919. At the center was the idea of the unity of design in all aspects of life, that art and industrial design could be united. The main focus was on functionality through simplified geometric shapes that allow new designs to be easily reproduced without affecting the end-user experience. David Penny immediately fell in love with the Bauhaus style. He felt that simple, understated timepieces are both elegant and timeless. As such, he designed the first Calatrava reference 96 in gold with a clean ivory dial that featured applied gold markers and a tiny subdiary seconds dial at 6 o'clock. This original Calatrava was such a success that it was produced over more than 40 years. Nowadays are 36 individual Calatrava models available. Watches in the Patek Philippe Calatrava collection typically sell between around 7,000 up to over 100,000 euros on the private sales market. You can find them with a lot of different metals like platinum, yellow gold, white gold, rosé gold, and in some cases even made out of steel. They feature all kinds of complications like indirect central seconds, no seconds, flyback chronograph, annual calendar, moon phase, and so on. But we don't think that the multitude of complications reflects David Penny's vision. There's also a huge amount of dial decorations. For example, you can find any hand form you can imagine, from syringe, leaf, dauphine, alpha, baton, pointer, pencil, breguet, and so on. But all designs and complications aside, the primary function was to give the time. No more, no less. The focus was on showing the time, and only the time, as clearly and attractive as possible. The secret was ageless elegance. Our today's piece with the reference 3445 comes in a 35mm yellow gold case, and inside of the case beats in Patek Philippe caliber 2746M self-winding movement. The name explains its key features. The movement was 27mm in diameter and 4.6mm thick. The letter M stands for the date function. This movement was a direct successor of Patek Philippe's first automatic movement, launched in 1953. It was produced from 1961 to 1967 and from 1970 to 1986. And over this 24 years, only 13,000 pieces were produced. The beautiful finished movement features 18 jewels, 18,000 beats per hour, and a power reserve of 46 hours. Considered an icon in history, the Calatrava, new or vintage, is a must-have in every watch collection. It's a versatile timepiece that goes from business to evening to casual weekend wear, all the while making an understated yet magnetic statement. So that's all from today. If you enjoyed this video and you want to hear from me again, make sure that you hit the subscribe button before you go.